Hello and welcome to a special edition of the Ramblings of Random Minds podcast. I'm Alex Starrett, and I suppose my host, Tanya, is on the other end of the camera, who will be interviewing me about questions on aquatic accessibility. I'll put it over to you, Tanya, to explain, I suppose, what this interview is for.
Okay, great. Thank you, Alex. So I am a certified aquatic therapist, and I am hoping to present to a group of people about disability awareness training in the aquatic environment. And of course, the best person to hear about that is a person that needs the accessibility to an aquatic environment. And you so graciously accepted my invitation to be interviewed around this, and hoping to share this to basically the nation. As I move into disability awareness training, a little scary.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that this will really help promote the conversation around disability awareness training in aquatic facilities, as well as inclusion and accessibility.
Mm-hmm. Great. Well, shall we get started?
Absolutely. So I thought the first thing that I'd like you to speak about is being a young man with a disability and how that impacts you on a daily basis.
To be honest, sometimes I have to acknowledge that I have disability. It doesn't. I find that I don't notice it all the time. I don't see myself as being different necessarily. At school, I'm just here with everybody else, and every once in a while, I guess I'm not the same. I guess I don't know. Not the greatest wording, but.
I think it's perfect. I think it definitely reflects on the fact that you don't feel separate from your peers or your elders, that you are living a very fulfilled life.
Yeah, I've been able to do so many things, and just my family have found so many ways aquatic therapy to be able to do just as much as everybody else, and just do fun things.
So when does that change? I assume that would change when accessibility to something or to a program or to an environment changes, is when you notice it. So what does that look like?
Yes. Like you said, I don't, I for the most part, I don't notice having a disability, but yeah, like you said, when that accessibility is taken away, or there are things that I can and can't do, then that does provide barriers. That's when I noticed I have a disability, and it's harder to do certain things. Sorry, do you mind saying the question again?
No, so if we can just build on that, what are some of the barriers? So you mentioned the word barriers. What are some of the barriers that come to mind that remind you, or that you sort of say, oh, this is not what I expected, and now I can't partake in an event or an activity?
I think most of the barriers are to do with I'll start general and then go into specifics, but most of the barriers are to do with ignorance, really, not knowing how to either interact or how to make things accessible. Perfect example is at a restaurant I go to, you get there and there's an accessible button, but it's behind a fire heater thing. And it's or accessible buttons. I can go on a long time about that, how they're way too high, or way too just not in the right spot that actually makes it accessible. Sure, it checks a box on the accessibility list, but it doesn't, unless it's in the right spot, unless it can be used, then it might as well not be there.
So it's there by the letter of the law, but it doesn't provide the function that is really required to make accessibility there.
Yeah, and that's it's you check the box, but you don't actually think that's going to be used, or something like that. Another example is there's a ramp right in front of an accessible spot, except when you park your car in front of the accessible spot, it blocks the ramp. And it's well, what's the point of that then?
Right. And you have your mobility van that you and your family use as a side loading van. So that accessing the side of the vehicle, not the back of the vehicle, becomes very important.
Yes, definitely.
Okay. So I can think of one example. So you're going into an aquatic facility. They have a lovely change room. They've got a lift, but they don't provide a sling. And you didn't know that. And you don't bring one from home. And all of a sudden, your opportunity to go in the water might be affected.
Yeah, like everything or most things are there, but not all the steps are taken. And it's
okay.
kind of like going back to what I was saying earlier. Like I feel like it all stems from not knowing or being afraid to ask, even.
I like that. And do you find that people are a little tentative to enter the disability conversation?
Definitely. 100%. I feel like there's a fear of the unknown with disability. Like you don't know to what extent somebody can and can't do stuff. It's a truth. I cannot do as much as everybody else. What's also truth is I can still do a lot. And not assuming either way, that's where you get trouble. So simply just asking is probably the best way to enter the conversation and start learning and not having this disability conversation be an unknown, because that's where all the fear comes from. It's a fear of the unknown. And that's what prevents people from, or that's what like causes struggles, I feel like.
Right. And I think you used some important words there. You used the word ignorance, but I think you used it in the true definition of the word, not as a negative thing, not as an insult, just simply that people don't know what they don't know.
Yeah.
And they make assumptions. That was another word I heard there that I think is really important. And that they're afraid. They're afraid to ask. They're afraid that even asking might create offense.
Yeah. Ignorance is a strong word, and maybe not the best one to use, but like not knowing is, oh shoot, where was I going to go with that?
I do that all the time.
You should, not knowing is completely fine. And acknowledging that you don't know is where you can start to learn.
I love that, Alex. I think that's really where I'm hoping that some of this disability awareness training for individuals is really going to come into play, which is how can we even just find the courage to ask what we don't know?
Yeah.
And be okay with that and say, hey, I don't understand this. Could you help me learn?
And saying it just like that is perfect. Like, I've heard this said before, like, what's the problem with that person? Maybe not the greatest way to say it, but like, you still have to ask, like, what, like, you have to be curious. That's the best way to go about it. Like, if you be curious and somebody jumps down your throat for, like, if you say it the right way and you're just purely curious, at least from my personal opinion, like, I feel like, I'm repeating myself, but, like, if you're curious, then that's great. Like, I'll answer any question for somebody who truly is just curious about or just anything to do with disability. And if somebody, like, jumps down your throat or yells at you for just purely being curious, that's not on you.
Right.
Like, yeah.
I just did some training, and the facilitator of the training, best training I've ever had, but that facilitator had a wonderful saying, which was, clear is kind, unclear is unkind. So I think that does speak to this, is that when we come in with a curious and clear question, that it should generate, hopefully, a positive response, a positive interaction.
Yeah.
If they come in curious and unclear, then maybe we get a little bit of that pushback sometimes, where we're like, I'm not quite sure what it is you're asking me here.
Yeah.
Where are you going with this? So,
yeah.
Okay. So your experience in the aquatic environment, let's start with the good things. I always like starting with the good, the 2 stars. What are the things in your experience with accessibility in the aquatic environment that work for you?
I mean, being in the aquatic environment allows me to move like I can't normally on land, and it removes so many forces against, like gravity, and just like even the weight of things and weight of my own body and like levers, like it allows me to move so much easier and better that normally I would not be able to do as much as I can in the aquatic or on land as in the aquatic environment. Um, yeah, it being in the water is really important to me to just like be able to do physical activity that I can. I mean, first of all, it's fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But also just like being able to move differently and like not feeling like I'm working against so much forces helps.
Right. So
so
that
much.
buoyancy of the water.
Yeah.
Do you find anything with the viscosity and drag of the water? So I know that sometimes when we're in the water, if somebody enters the therapy pool and walks by us too quick, that creates a little bit more of a tricky environment for you versus when it's gentle or when it's very quiet around you, you can move even bigger moves and you have an easier time.
Yeah, it certainly, if there's lots of waves or currents caused by people or otherwise, like it does make it difficult to do everything that I want to do or do everything that I potentially could do, just because it's another force that I'm fighting against, I suppose.
Right.
And it makes it so that I get tired more quickly and just makes it harder to do stuff in the water if there's big currents or waves or disturbances from other people. Yeah.
And what about the concerns if the pool is full of people and you know that their spatial awareness is not there? What about the concern to your physical body in the water of being hit or run into?
Yeah, that's certainly a huge concern because if I get hit, I cannot recover very easily, or like if my leg gets caught somewhere or something, or any arm or whatever. But like contact is a genuine concern for me that it not something I can recover from very easily. Like if I get knocked over, like I can't get back up, for example, without help, or like I'm more easily prone to injury too, so that's also a worry. If there's a lot of people who aren't necessarily as spatially as aware, that can become a very dangerous environment for me very quickly.
Right. So then your experience in the water, we introduce some anxiety versus being fully comfortable and not worried when it's a nice quiet pool and it's being controlled and moderated by lifeguards and aquatic staff.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. Okay. So speaking to, if you were to go to an aquatic facility and they didn't have a water wheelchair, would you be able to go in the water?
I have not in a way that I know of at the moment. There might be if there's some sort of lift or something, it might be difficult, but also if there was no supports for like a water wheelchair or lift, even the lift is difficult, but if there are no supports like that, it would be dangerous for me and the people getting me into the pool if I wanted to persist to do that.
Right.
It's like the best way is somebody lifting me in if there's no supports, and that's just dangerous. Like I could be dropped, they could hurt themselves lifting that low. Having a water wheelchair definitely helps. Being able to get in and out of the water much easier.
Right. So the ramps, the zero entry pools, the deck lifts, but also having a lift to get you from your chair into the deck lift becomes very, very important factors.
Yeah, definitely. There's so many steps that people don't necessarily think about when building these, or not building these, but like there's a lot more than people who are able-bodied and don't have an experience of knowing somebody with a disability that it's just like, oh, I didn't think of that, and that's completely fine that you didn't think of it, but being curious and outgoing, and like asking like, how can we best help you? That is important, I feel.
And that's one of the most important questions to me to teach people is, how do you need me to support you? Right? Not making those assumptions, because sometimes maybe we're not getting any support, and sometimes we're getting too much support, and it's a fine balance to find for each individual. What does that support look like for them?
Like you said, it's on an individual level. It's for everybody, but also like there's two extremes there. Like, you can be overcompensating, like, what do you need? What can I help you with? And that, I feel like for me, that comes with an assumption that you do need help. Not everybody needs help. That's not a given. Back to that individual level, but also being there to say, like, I'm here if you need me, just to ask, sort of thing. That is also important. Like, not just ignoring or like turning away or like avoiding. Yeah, that's the perfect word.
Yeah,
there's a fine balance there, like not assuming that I need help, but also not, if I do need help, being there for that help.
So do you find then disability awareness training for the staff is important to help aid in what you just spoke about? Is that teaching them how to approach an individual with a disability, teaching them how to communicate, giving them teaching strategies, and just giving them a general awareness of what different disabilities are and how those different disabilities may or may not impact people? Do you feel that that's an important piece for the aquatic staff to have?
Yes, I think that is very important. The first thing that comes to mind is like the fear of the unknown is really where all these problems come from. And I mean, just having aquatic staff aware of disabilities, you don't need to be specifics necessarily, but just aware that people have disabilities and sometimes they need help, sometimes they don't. Like, getting rid of that unknown breaks the barrier of fear very well. I had another thing I was going to say, and now I forget.
Well, when it pops up, you can just interrupt me. Okay. So if you know, so the one facility that we attend right now, you know that I have trained the staff in disability awareness training. Do you notice the difference in that staff compared to other facilities?
Yes, I would say so. To be honest, I haven't been to other facilities that often, so it's hard for me personally to contrast, but I feel like I do recognize it. And like, for example, like when people are trying to get into the pool who don't need the therapy pool, like having the staff there like say, no, you cannot be in here, XYZ, like rather than us needing to explain that. It's like having somebody there who has our back in some sort of way. Or a buffer, yeah. And like having somebody who's like works there also, like I feel like what can I do if somebody's walking in and is like, it's like I don't have any authority, I suppose, to say like, no, I need this space. But if the like staff there recognizes I need the space and they do have the authority to like say this person needs it, then that is helpful, I find.
So you almost feel like there's more of a collaboration there where you know they've got your back and that you don't have to get into personal details and advocate yet one more minute of your day for yourself, that it's nice to kind of put that advocate or that shoulder that responsibility on to somebody who can collaborate with you and say, you enjoy your therapy session, I got your back on this, I can do this part of the controlling of your environment.
Yeah, certainly. It's like, on the one hand, I do like advocating for like stuff and like bringing awareness to this, but on the other hand, it can get tiring when it's everybody always. Like I can communicate one person and then they can pass on that message. That helps a lot.
Well, and that's what we're hoping this video, this podcast really will do, is just start the conversation rolling and like you said, remove that barrier of some of the unknown, which can just open up some different opportunities. How would you like to have lifeguards interact with you on deck? Is that important for you? I know you had earlier mentioned not everybody wants it all the time or needs help all the time. But what would that look like for you to have a different interaction?
Honestly, it's a simple answer, I feel. Just like anybody else. I am just like anybody else. Like, you wouldn't go out of your way to say, what can I help you with? Like, do you need this? Do you need that? You wouldn't do that for, I use this word intentionally, even though I don't like it, a normal person is the word, side tangent. The word normal, it has a connotation of, like, there is a different, and like a normal is just an idea in our head. It's not anything that you can point at.
I agree with you. Define normal, and everybody's definition is going to be a bit different.
It's probably define normal. For most people, it's probably defining yourself to some degree, because you don't necessarily see yourself as different, but for the most part. But yeah, anyway. Just like any other person. Don't go out of your way to say that, like, don't go out of your way to, like, help me, but also don't, like, if you're walking past me, don't, like, avert your eyes and, like, ignore or avoid me. Like, just say hi or smile. Like,
hey, I'm Tanya. What's your name? I see you here. I'm super glad you enjoy your experience.
Like, or not even that. Just, like, acknowledging I'm there. Not that that's a rare occurrence that happens, but, like, it happens more often than not that people are afraid and just try and don't know how to interact with me and treat me differently than they would a normal person. And you don't have to. Just treat me like a normal person. Treat me like you treat anybody else there.
Can you speak a little bit to how it feels when people speak to you through your parents?
Yes. That's happened too often for what it should be, that people don't directly talk to me or, like, talk to whoever I'm with. Like, I know going into high school, it was, I don't know, it was something I had to navigate early on, just, like, it's absurd's a strong word, but, like, as odd as it sounds, that like, talk to me if you, like, there's a couple of people who asked, what's his name? So, like, my teacher or a friend, and I'm like, my name's Alex, I'm here.
And I'm an honor roll student, thank you. Like,
like, you can ask me, I can talk with you. Like, it's not, it certainly does get frustrating to break down those assumptions, or, like, I don't know, it feels like it shouldn't happen.
But it does.
And it's not all the time, but it still happens enough that it is something that I need to navigate or, like, work through with the people close to me. Like, if somebody asks, like, what's his name, let me answer, sort of thing. Like, don't, like, something like that.
Okay. So, and the next question, this might be a tough question and you don't need to answer it if you don't want to. Do you find that people define who you are by your chair or by who you are?
Initially by my chair. I think that's, I think it's the first thing that most people see. Like, oh, that person's in a chair. It's not necessarily, sometimes people act on it, sometimes people don't. But I think as people get to know me, or really just anybody with a disability, you kind of lose that. You lose that idea of, oh, that's the wheelchair person, to use language that I don't like, but definitely how people think. It's the first thing most people see. I think that's something I can't deny, but it doesn't define me.
No, I think once people get to know you and have a conversation, they see this very well-spoken young man who's accomplishing amazing things, and then it becomes a bit more of the I'm sitting in a chair just like you. It's just my chair goes with me where I go,
Yeah.
and you get to get up and walk out of yours. So,
Yeah.
but otherwise, same.
Yeah. Like my wheelchair allows me to move, or allows me to navigate and have some degree of, I don't know what the right word would be, but I'll say like freedom to be able to move and yeah. But being in a chair isn't who I am.
No.
It's a part of me. I don't think I'd ever say like, oh yeah, that doesn't have any impact on my identity, but it isn't. My identity is not wheelchair person, and stereotypically, I think sometimes people can jump to that initially, but which is fair, but something to maybe work out. I don't know. Yeah.
Well, and if we can get more and more people to understand what we've already talked about, which is coming curious and just treat me like anyone else, we can maybe start to erase some of those lines or blur them a bit, or at least dim them down a bit.
Yeah, certainly. Like not seeing all people with disabilities as those are people with disabilities, but seeing them individually, just like
they're human beings. They all have feelings. They all have names. They all have voices. I find even non-speaking have voices.
Yeah,
they just sound different, or they come out in different ways.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you talk to me a little bit of how important the water environment is to your quality of life? So we usually meet on a weekly basis for 1 hour in a very warm pool. So water temperature is extremely important for you, for your body. Can you speak a little bit to what being in the water, what being able to be a part of an adapted aquatic therapy or adapted Watsu session brings for you?
I mean, first thing to mention, it's fun. That is, like, not that physio isn't fun, but like, it's not like just you come here, you do stretches, you do work, like it's fun to be in the water for me anyway. And it's fun to move and do physical activity in a way that I don't feel confined by gravity. It's not confined by my chair necessarily, but I think gravity is really the big one. And yeah, I think it helps my quality of life in that I can move, I can do physical activity with less barriers. Yeah. And yeah, I'm trying to think.
What about when the water's too cold? So you would really feel a drop. So some of the pools that we've gone to in the past maybe have been a little bit below therapy temperature. The current facility we use is pretty consistent at therapy temperature, which is about 35 degrees. What difference does water temperature make to your experience?
For me personally anyway, I have a hard time getting heat back. So water temperature is very important. Like, if it's too cold, like, I might be cold for the rest of the day. I might not be able to get that back very easily. Yeah, it's having a warm pool allows me to be comfortable in the water, which allows me to be able to do the things I want to do. Yeah.
Perfect. Until we get out, and then you get that blast of cold air on the deck.
Yeah.
Which, the teeth start to chatter and your lips turn blue pretty quick.
Yeah.
So again, there's that. So then we're speaking a little bit to the importance also of ambient air temperature, that sometimes the pools are really good at controlling water temperature, but then the ambient air temperature is a little too cold. And again, that has a bit of an impact on the body.
Yeah. Like, any time that I'm, especially coming from water to out of the water, like, that can make me cold very quick. And like I said earlier, like, it's hard for me to get that heat back. And that can affect me for the rest of the day. So
That's where Emily Follansbee School, where we used to go, was so wonderful because they controlled water temperature and ambient air temperature.
yeah,
And I don't think there was a lot of chilling getting out of the pool. However, we can accommodate, right? We
Yeah.
just make sure we've got your towels ready to go and we bundle you up as quickly as possible, trap that heat in.
yeah,
Yeah.
certainly.
So that becomes important too. Is there anything else that sort of popped up to you that you would like recreational facilities, aquatic facilities, general public, just anybody to know? Sometimes we say the word disability and people have a tendency to not want to talk about it or to feel like it's going to be a scary conversation. Like you said, that fear of the unknown. How can we break down some of these barriers other than what you and I are doing right now, which is let's get the conversation going?
Yeah.
But what else can we do you think?
I think that's certainly the biggest thing, like getting a conversation going, breaking down those unknowns. Everybody's different in terms of what words they like, but I think disability is a universally accepted word, mostly because it calls it what it is. It having a disability makes life different. That's not untrue, but at the same time, it doesn't, like, there's other words that have connotations that are like worse. And I feel like acknowledging something what it is without like adding your assumptions to it is very important. Yeah, and just overall talk to people, talk to them like they're anybody else, and don't be afraid of somebody having a disability. It just
And remembering too, I think that like myself as your aquatic therapist, I have a clinical medical background in training, so I approach it a little bit differently at times.
Yeah.
But understanding for people that aren't in a role like myself as a physiotherapist, occupational therapist, aquatic therapist would be, is that you don't have to have that medical degree. You don't have to ask the personally medical questions.
Yeah.
It's just, hey,
Yeah.
great to see you here. I see you here often. What's your name? If there's anything I can do to help support you and make your experience better, let me know. Cool to see you here. And just be human.
Yeah. Disabilities are just as much, if not more, a social, it's not a problem, but like a social dilemma than it is a medical thing. Like the diagnosis doesn't affect your or my life as much. It's what people think of seeing a chair that makes some things difficult, more so.
And the accommodations, you've grown up in an extremely supportive environment where accommodations just made life fairly normal for you, where you're like, my disability doesn't define me.
Yeah.
You don't need to know the medical details. Here's what you do need to know to interact well with me and be my friend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I can do a lot. And yeah, I can do a lot. And I don't know where he's going with that. Shoot.
Well, I think we can see that in the Canadian Tire Olympic commercial that you participated in, which was awesome. You've got your podcast, you've got things on YouTube, you audition, you play the trumpet, you sing in the choir, you do your aquatic therapy. You're very active. You're active in your community. You're active in your school.
Yeah.
You're an honor roll student, correct? You've got a bright future. There's amazing things coming. But I do think that we could open up, if we can open up the conversation and get more adapted programming that encompasses more.
Yeah.
Your experience sometimes partaking in adapted programming, do you find that it's fine for a certain level of disability and then it stops working for a certain level?
It depends. I will say, I think for the most part, yes. And the things that do work for multiple levels are scarce to find, and like I don't particularly like using specific examples, but I will in this case. Like Rocky Mountain Adaptive is an organization that does like outdoor activities in like Canmore area, and they're amazing. They accommodate so many things. I've done so many amazing things with them. They have a summer camp that I think it's like open to 10 families or so at William Watson Lodge. That for like a week they do like just a bunch of cool activities. It's sold out in 20 minutes.
It speaks volumes, doesn't it?
So if there's something that's amazing like that, it's in demand, but there's not a supply to meet that.
Right. So we need to see more.
Yeah.
We need to get more programs out there that will help with all sorts of disabilities of all spectrums. Yeah. So not just, I don't want to say light disability. Mm-hmm. Wouldn't that be fun to term disability light? But no, we're not talking that, but we're talking, like you'd said, everybody's experience is different. Some people are more independent. Some people need more support. So seeing more programs that can encompass all those levels being interactive together would be of amazing importance.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And I certainly would like to see more in the aquatic world, because I think really what you've alluded so well to when you've talked about your experience in the water is that the water is your greatest equalizer.
Yeah.
You can do things in the water that are more in line with your peers. Like you can run in the water.
Yeah.
You can bicycle in the water.
Yeah.
You can get your body moving in the water in ways where it's trickier on land because gravity.
Yeah.
And what a wonderful world if we could open up the water to more people with all levels of disability. We can really equalize a lot of things for them, a lot of movements, a lot of experiences.
Yeah, definitely. The water has allowed me to do so much that before I wouldn't have been able to even imagine. It is such a good method if you're comfortable in the water to move and have fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And we do have a lot of fun in the water, for sure. We've got a lot of laughs. We always have great conversation. And just for an example for our listeners is your ability to lift that 5-pound sand ball in the water. That is a heavy ball.
Yeah.
But you can lift that in the water, and we can engage muscles that just cannot engage with that kind of weight on land. And what an amazing feeling that is to feel that.
Yeah, definitely. And moving my legs too. Like on land, it's very difficult to move my legs because gravity makes it hard. But in the water, I can have a great range of motion and be able to use muscles that honestly I've never used before.
Yeah.
And that is so beneficial.
Absolutely. So if you were to say one last word about people partaking in disability awareness training, what would it be?
Just talk with people. Don't be afraid to talk about disability. Get rid of that fear of the unknown, and learn how to interact with people and
let's break down that barrier.
Yeah, definitely.
Excellent.